Hello and welcome to the AgCulture Podcast, where we cultivate tomorrow by inspiring agripreneurs and ag innovators through real-life perspectives in agriculture. I'm Paul Windemuller, your host on this journey of exploration and growth. On today's episode, we have Tom Wall. I've known Tom now for many years. He has been known originally as the dairy coach in the dairy industry in the U.S., all over the U.S. He's traveled, consulted with farms, and Tom has specialized in training and human resource management in and around the dairy industry. Tom is also the CEO of PeopleCor, which is an app-based system for people management on dairy farms and other farming enterprises. So today's conversation, we're going to talk about the need and some of the shortfalls around people management, around training on farms, specifically in the U.S., and in the industry in general. We're also going to talk about Tom's pivot from consulting one-on-one with dairy farms to pivoting to a software system that he developed called PeopleCor, and his journey, what he's learned along the way, and how he's having a greater impact in the industry today. So stick around for our conversation that we had about human resources and people management in agriculture. Hey everyone, before we get started with today's episode, I just wanted to take a second to thank our sponsors, Bank Barn. I love these guys and what they're doing to streamline banking in agriculture. They're helping to connect farmers and lenders so that today's farmers have more options no matter the size of operation. Check out bankbarn.io to learn more. Tom Wall, the dairy coach. Welcome to the AgCulture Podcast. It's so good to have you here today.
Thanks, Paul. Great to be here.
I'm really looking forward to our conversation. You know, you're known as the dairy coach, but the conversation that we're going to have today, I think, is really applicable to really anyone in agriculture, especially farmers that do training and hiring of staff for their enterprises. And I'm really looking forward to digging into some of the nuggets that you've learned over your career. Why don't you start out by giving us a little bit of background of kind of what you're doing today and then how you got into that?
Yeah, today I've been focused 100% on an app called PeopleCor. It's an HR, an employee management app and time clock system that we've built dedicated just for the dairy industry. So everything that we're doing, it's really just focused on helping dairy farmers, dairy producers manage their employees, improve leadership, and bring more transparency to their employees.
Awesome. So what led you to that? I mean, you had the dairy coach business for quite a number of years.
Yeah.
How did that start?
Yeah. So the whole thing started about 25 years ago, I think like 24 in like another month. And that whole thing started as a translation company because 20 some years ago in Wisconsin, we realized that we needed some language help. And then as I did that for a few years, I realized actually it's really not as much about language. It's just employees, people. So then we kind of morphed from translation to employee communication systems. And then that just kept ramping up as far as simple systems, helping dairy producers really get a strategy, some structure around their business. And from there, every day, I wish I had a tool. Like, you know, we've got all these different tools for herd management, feed management, finance, like all the things. But there was never anything other than just a paper time card and a clock that people would punch in. That was the closest we got to employee management. And we'd always run into the same questions. Employees want to know about their wages, their hours, their shifts, their benefits, and the owners would never have an answer. We're sitting there in an employee meeting, and I get the same questions all the time. I just wish we had some structured organization where they could ask about their last raise, their next raise, their whatever, and we could just pull out a file and be like, it was this day, it was like, just give them all the answers, and they could go home and like, all right, honey, I've got 3 more vacation days left. My next raise is in 2 months. I decided, like, I was just naive enough to think that I could go find some programmers and build an app. And I'm glad I did because there's a huge need for it. And it's going great. We're working with dairies across the entire country and we're making a huge difference on their HR departments.
So what are some of the lessons that you learned early on? I mean, you said you started out as a translation business really, and saw there's a need for so much more in the industry. What did that look like how did you get into that? Was that you being on the farm every day, interacting with employees? And
went to Mexico when I was like, I took a year off of college to learn Spanish. And I just knew that I didn't want to landscape forever. I didn't have the back for it. So I just was trying to figure out after graduation, what am I going to do? So I used my Spanish to get in the dairy industry and the green industry. It started in landscaping and horticulture, but then some friends were saying, hey, we're really struggling. He was an assistant herds person over in Wisconsin, saying, we really are struggling. If you could bring your Spanish to the dairy industry, we'd happily welcome you there. I knew nothing about fresh cows, heifers, nothing about anything about mastitis, Mag-Cell-Count. I had to learn from zero, which was a huge benefit actually, because I had to learn like the employees that were coming across the border who also didn't know anything about it or limited. So I got to the industry kind of by accident, but I think there was such a need that people were like, all right, we'll take you anyway, and we'll teach you what you need to know. And it's been a great 20 some years.
I know we talked a lot in the past in conversations that we've had together about the in the industry, how farmers aren't probably the best human resource managers or trainers. We just want to get a job done. So we hire an employee. Okay, great. That person's ready to go. Just throw them in the fire and baptism by fire, right?
Yeah, for sure. Well, and I think one of our biggest, so often our biggest strengths become our biggest weaknesses. So, dairy producers for their whole lives have been doing this work. And so by the time they're hiring employees, like, how hard is this job? I've been doing this my whole life. I started when I was 7, whatever the reality is. And so training, I think what I noticed a lot of times, and I'm guilty of this too with my team, but training becomes here's some boots, here's some gloves, points over to the parlor and says, the cows are in there, go ahead and start milking. Because how hard can it be, right? I mean, like, we've been doing this for a long time. So there's this gap between what we think everybody should know or already knows and what we need them to know. So we really have to take a step back, or maybe 10 steps back, and be like, all right, this is a cow, this is an udder, this is a good quality milk, and really start from scratch. Because so many people, what I noticed is employees knew that they had to get all the work done, and whatever it took to get it done in the time they were given, that's what they would do. So if it meant working faster or sloppier or whatever, what we were measuring was that it was done, not that it was done well, and that it was done efficiently, and it was done all these little details that dairy producers inherently know but struggle to communicate.
So what are some of the ways that you've helped develop on farms to be able to professionalize that and really say, okay, the job isn't just to get this done, it's to do it well, and here's how we're going to measure well?
Yeah. Okay, so from my perspective, whenever I started with a dairy, and so I'm no longer doing the dairy coach role because I'm 100% focused on PeopleCor, but every time I'd work with a client on the dairy coach side, I always wanted to start with, all right, we've got to do employee meetings once a month. I don't like doing them any more than that because nobody really likes meetings, but we need to have one place that this would be a central place where we share everything that follows. And what follows is a job description, so everybody has a clear understanding of what's expected. So for me, number one is clarity. All right. So that means this is your role. This is what's expected. From that job description, every bullet point became protocols, milking routines, treatments, cleaning schedules, all the things that we needed them to do. So now it's all about clarity, and we're getting people on board. Then we actually have to communicate it. So that's a combination of, we would do some of the whys in the once a month in a meeting. That's where I came in. And the what's and the hows had to happen out in the barns. And I wasn't there every day. I was really there once a month. And so we'd have to work with the managers to make sure they were training properly. Or we'd give videos. I created a bunch of videos back in the day when I was younger and had more hair. And we would make sure everybody had a real access to all of those what's, hows, and whys. And then the final piece of that whole puzzle was the like a review process, evaluation process. So then there was actual feedback, so people knew how they were doing. Because tell you what, almost every employee on the dairies I work with, they really want to do a good job. They just didn't know what that meant. And a lot of people didn't tell them if they were doing a good job. So they'd have to ask, hey, do you like my work? That would be the exact translation. Do you like my work, boss? And the more we could say what to do, how to do, and whether that's going well, the more we could repeat the good work that we needed. So clarify, discipline, and then accountability. Those three things, clarity, discipline, accountability, that was the heart of the program that we would build.
So that's really how you instill good work out of people of potentially entry-level positions. Is that the same for higher level positions as well in operations that you've noticed?
No, so we're not really starting from scratch with the higher level people. That really, we have to hone in on the details so they truly understand the decision-making process. So often, like one of the things, just to give an idea, if I was working with people who had like feeders, herds people, that whole mid to upper level role, for me, it was, this is what okay, so let's say we walk up to a cow and you see something back in your role, back when we worked together in Michigan, you would walk up with Jose and you'd say, all right, I'm seeing something. What are you seeing? And see if they answer anything. Probably not, right? And so then you're going to be like, all right, you do some cow side diagnosis and he's like, okay, you do the same and tell me what you saw. So now we're going to get a little more tactical. And then it's, okay, what did you hear? Okay, here's what I heard. This is what I would, or what would you do? This is what I do. So it'd be this back and forth, this little volley back and forth, because you're trying to get to the heart of decision making. Actually, you're getting to the heart of observation first. And then you want to see like, okay, are we seeing the same things? And now are we thinking the same way? Because so often what you need to transfer to your mid-level people, it's not the what's so much. Like, hey, we're going to milk cows 3 strips. We're going to dip left to right, counterclockwise, whatever we're going to do. In this case, you're really trying to say, hey, I need to transfer my knowledge and my experience to somebody who probably can do it, just not yet. So often, whether it's a feeder or a herds person, somebody in the middle to upper level of those positions, you're trying to get whatever's in your head and all those years of experience into theirs so they can essentially be an extension of you.
Well, that's a great perspective of differentiating between entry-level positions and more of the management level positions. So I appreciate you bringing that up.
Let me add, though, to that whole decision-making process deal. The entry-level people probably make more decisions in the course of a day than even the mid-level people. And here's what they are. They're not big high-level decisions as far as like, do we treat or not treat, or do we use this or that medicine? They have to make a decision. Am I going to strip each teat? Am I going to add dip to each one? It's all these little micro decisions, but 1,000 times, because they literally have to decide to do their job right every time. So I don't want to discount the fact that the entry-level people aren't making decisions. We just need to make sure that they know that they need to make the right decisions to do their job. And maybe we'll talk about that a little bit further, but my biggest thing is those entry-level people make good decisions when they 100% believe that their boss actually cares about them. So the technical side of the decisions for mid-level people, that's very technical, very like straight out of your conversation with a veterinarian. But the entry-level people, they make a decision because they buy in, they believe in the people who lead them. They know that they care about each other. There's trust. There's appreciation. So the decisions are just different. I just didn't want to make it sound like entry-level people aren't making decisions. They are, but they come more from the gut and less from a textbook.
So how do you build that trust? How do you build that belief that you just talked about?
Yeah, it starts really simply. I can go from the start. Like, first off, a lot of people say, hey, I'm not good with names. And I think none of us are really good with names, because most of us, if we're not paying attention, we didn't even hear the person's name, right? But I think we're all good with names if we care, if we try. So number one, just learn people's names. Even if you've got a lot of employees, I mean, that's the core of the business, right? All the work that we do, everything, it's all about the people who do the work. So number one, just show that you care enough by asking somebody's name and memorizing it, learning it. That's number one. The next easiest way to show somebody that you care as a boss is to keep things fixed, repaired. I mean, as simple as this is, if guys go to work every day, guys and gals go to work 8, 10, 12 hours a day, and they're dealing with broken tools, the message that you unintentionally send is there's bigger, more important things that I need to concern myself with. Your broken gates, scrapers, anything, it's not high on my list. It's on the list, but not really high on my list. So the minute somebody assumes or perceives that what they do doesn't matter, that two-way street is going to get ugly, because they can prove to you that they don't care about you also by just not doing the work that you need them to do. Those two things, just seeing somebody as a person, their name, and then keeping things fixed so they can actually do their job.
Those go a long ways to really build that relationship and trust.
100%. Absolutely.
What's the difference between training somebody and managing somebody?
Well, the training really, that involves teaching, showing, like some show and tell. So that's kind of at the core. The training it's ongoing. It's not just day one, but the idea that you're communicating what needs to be done so they actually know, and showing. Most of us learn by seeing, by watching and doing. It's not just by being told. So it usually has to be a component of, in my belief, there's got to be that classroom side where it's clean and easy to understand. It's not all this noise going around and your pressure in the case of a dairy with cows coming in and coming out. Like, you can just sit and actually ask questions and learn. But then the other part of the training is, all right, let's go get our boots dirty and I'll show you what I need you to do. And then your turn and then my turn. It's kind of like, all right, now you do it. Now I'll do it. And now I'll watch you and you watch me. So that's like a whole training back and forth. The managing is actually just paying attention and communicating what you see. Tom Peters back in the 80s wrote the book In Search of Excellence. And their big thing was management by walking around. I'm a huge believer in that whole system, because if you're present and you know what's going on and you're walking barns and you're walking the facilities, you can see what's happening. You can see who's doing what. And that gives you a chance to actually give feedback as to what needs to be done or what is being done. One of my favorite tools for my clients is it's a checklist of 10 things, random things. If you picked one a day, you basically have to walk around, see stuff. And then the component that really works is you write a note or you go and tell somebody like, hey, nice work with the waters. I noticed all the waters are clean. So I saw the waters and I told somebody what I saw. Now, if they're dirty, you tell them that too. But if they're clean, you have to tell them. You can't just say, good, they're clean. Nothing to do here. There's always the component of feedback, right? Because if I know that you watched it or you saw it, I'm sorry. If I know you're watching and you saw something and then you give me the feedback, which proves it, I know that you're managing. And this list that I created, and I think this could work in any industry, any company, pick 10 random things that matter and then just do one a day in no particular order. Employees think you're everywhere. And pretty soon they start saying, hey, boss, at 3 o'clock, I don't know if you're watching the cameras. Like, no, it's 3 a.m. I'm not watching the cameras. But there's this perception that Paul is everywhere and he's seeing everything that's going on because you just kind of set the tone that, hey, I'm watching. I'm telling you what I see. And I know what's going on in my farm.
I think that's a great hack. I'm definitely going to use that.
I'll send you the PDF.
Perfect. Awesome. So I want to pivot to what you pivoted to. So you went from the dairy coach, being known as the dairy coach and being on farms all the time, every day, to really getting into the tech industry and diving into what you saw as a problem in the industry that needed to be solved. So let's go back to that. What was the original impetus for starting PeopleCor?
So it started by actually just having manila folders with kind of like a personnel folder. Basically their basic information. And then we had, because a lot of my customers, we also had a pay scale in place, because one of my deals is most people take these jobs because they like the predictability, they like the stability. And in that, they want to know how much money they're going to start with and how far they can go. And then we'd have a structure to say, at the first 2 months, then 6 months, then a year after that, every year, we'd have a built-in scheduled pay scale evaluation, not guaranteed, but most of the time as the market would go, you kind of stuck doing raise increases. But I literally had a printer in Green Bay print this whole pay scale on the back of a manila envelope or a file folder. So PeopleCor started out as a piece of paper, printed on this folder, this file folder, which at the time I thought was brilliant. Like, we actually put these folders through a printer. At first I was gluing sheets of paper on, right?
So that's how a tech company starts, right?
Always, right? It starts with paper and a glue stick, legit. So PeopleCor started in my kitchen just with a glue stick and some paper. And then the printer actually said, oh, we can do that. What happened is at the meetings, my clients would just bring their personnel folders right to the meeting because we knew things were going to be asked. So they just have this hanging file with all these personnel folders in it. And when when Jorge would come over and ask a question, then we could just quickly pull out his file, look at the side of this, what was written on, and we could give him an answer about his next review or his last review or how many vacation days he has left, because that's what we put on the back of the folder. And I just realized this is great. I mean, if you want to bring your file cabinet wherever you go, but we're all driving, walking around with these smartphones in our pockets, like it or not. And I knew I had a friend in Green Bay who owned a tech company, and he's like, yeah, we could build that. Unfortunately, his coders weren't all that good, so we kind of built it. The very first iteration of PeopleCor, it was called DairyCor at the time. It wasn't too impressive. I wasn't too proud of it. We had to redo a lot of code. We had to do a lot of work. But that was like 8, 9, 10 years ago. So we've come a long, 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 long way from a decade.
Yeah, and that's how most software companies start, right? They release a beta version that is pretty simplistic and probably one step up above the glue stick at the kitchen table, but maybe not 2 steps above that.
Not much. But we were trying.
So what did you learn besides it takes a lot of work to produce a good software? What else did you learn through that process?
So and it's a continuing education on this end. I'm 100% convinced that design always matters. So good design, let me just fast forward to now. We'll skip those first 5 years, and now I've got this incredible team. There's 10 of us now. I've got an incredible designer. I won't even shop around for anybody else because he gets it so well. And here's what I mean. If you think about some of the easiest sites and apps you use in the course of just life, for me, Amazon always takes the top spot, because they figured out with one click, whether you like them or not, you go to Amazon, one click, it's already being delivered. You don't even have to go in and change your payment or your address. We already put that in there, right? And now you get an email saying it'll be there in a day. What I learned by watching companies like Apple or Amazon is if we make it easy, people will do it. And that goes with garbage cans at the farm, right? You put a garbage can too far away and you'll never get any garbage in it. But you put it right where it needs to be. And the odds, I'm not saying it's no guarantee, but the odds are better that the gloves will actually be in the garbage can. Again, it's the odds game. When building this software program, just a wrong word causes confusion. If we're not really careful with the wording we use, because you have to keep it 2 words as opposed to 5. If we're really clear with our wording, nobody calls and says, "Hey, a question about the wages screen." They just know. It's just so intuitive that we really put so much thought into the development from the design side before we even get to code it.
So when you were doing the dairy coach position, I mean, you had several farms that you were impacting through that, but it was really hard to kind of leverage your time. Is that one big thing that you see that you want to make a bigger impact and you're going to be able to do it through bringing a software like this to the market?
Yeah, that's great perspective, really, Paul. When doing Dairy Coach, doing a consulting role, you can only get so far. There's only 24 hours a day, 7 days a week. If I worked every minute of every day with never taking time off, and some days it felt like that, of course it wasn't, but you can only get so far. You can only do, and then couple that with, Tuesday's herd check, so that's off. That's out of the question. Fridays we're trying to keep a little light. So anyway, we could only make so much impact in so many ways. Now with this software program, we can reach more dairies. We can be all over the country all at the same time. This has completely, for me, it's changed the game. We can serve that many more people, that many more herds, that many more families by just having a software program working 24 hours a day.
So do you see it growing into a complete HR solution? Is that kind of your end game with PeopleCor? Or what's it look like in 5 years?
It's already, I'd like to say humbly, I'd like to say it's already becoming that. We've been building on it. The game changer for us was the time clock. We saw all the different systems that were out there and realized that it missed on a lot of levels, especially in our industry. Just a bilingual component, just that alone. But so once we get this whole time and attendance piece really locked in, then the next thing is why can't we just use a time clock for communication as well? It doesn't just record hours. And then why can't we use the time clock for helping manage labor budgets? So here's the thing. The time clock for every business, that's like the hub of all people stuff. So employees come and go morning, noon, and night. So one of my favorite features is we can send a message. Like you're sitting in your office, you can type up a message in English. It translates it into Spanish and delivers that message in the right language to the right people. So you might want to send a message to the 4 guys in house 2, and then you might want to send to the 2 people who work in the CAF center. One speaks English, one speaks Spanish. You just start sending your messages as you go, and the next time they punch in or out, it's sitting there waiting for them. The next thing is we're utilizing trying to leave announcements so everybody can see them, whether it's birthdays and anniversaries, which guy walks into the farm is like, oh, they remembered. Well, we programmed it. Sure, they remembered, but it's a big little detail. It's a little detail, but it's a big little detail because employees walk in wanting to be recognized for their 3-year anniversary, their 3-year anniversary. And so often bosses forget. You're busy. You got the banker calling you. You got a landlord saying they need whatever. And the last thing you're going to remember is that your feeder named Bill it just completed his 4th year with the farm. But when you walk by it and get that reminder too, because you didn't remember, you're like, oh, shoot, that's right. Bill, he had an anniversary today. So when you see Bill, you're like, hey, thanks for another year. Happy to have you. Thanks for all you do. So we're utilizing tools that we already have. We're just kind of, I'll say, flipping them on their side so that we can actually use them to our advantage on a business side to get more loyalty with the employees, more engagement, and then communicate across languages, across shifts, because hard to reach the 3rd shift guy and tell him that we're going to switch T-tips because it's really cold tonight. So when you're sitting at your kid's ball game at 4:30 in the afternoon, you're like, oh, shoot, the guy's coming in at 9 o'clock tonight. They need to switch over to the blue post-tip. You just sit there in the gym, you're typing this up, and all your milkers coming in 4 hours, they see it when they punch in. They can't forget. And then they have to mark that they saw it so they read it. Now, I can't guarantee they did it, but we can guarantee that they know, and hopefully they will do it.
We talked about accountability earlier and being a very important component in managing people. And that's something that you really spent a lot of time building into the software, as well as a component to be able to remember stuff, to hold people accountable and to follow up when you have reviews. So you want to talk about that, what that looks like, and how important having a regular review is?
Yeah. So it's really about expectations. We clarify what we expect from employees when it comes to their work. And then if we're doing our jobs really well, we're also clarifying what they can expect from us as managers. So for example, if we hire a guy today and say, all right, here's your job description, here's what we need you to do. And then we're going to make sure you're trained on, we're going to make sure you know it. One of our systems is an onboarding core competency. So then we can check off that a guy got his paperwork and he got his training videos and he did all the things. So we have some assurance that our managers are actually doing their jobs to make sure the employees get the training that they need. That's kind of number one. From there, we've told employees that in 2 months, you'll get a review. And then we get busy and we forget. So now this tool also holds us accountable. Well, of course, we're holding the employees accountable, but now it holds us accountable because now we get a ping a day or two or a week before, depending on how we set it up, that, hey, we got to do a review. We got to get this ready because Juan Carlos, he hits 2 months, on next Thursday. So now we're all holding each other more accountable to get the work done. And then back to the point of easy, the way we've designed it, it makes a job or a performance review that most of us dread to do. We make it easy. So it's just yes, no, good, bad, like thank you for, needs improvement. We just make it super easy for the managers so they can't say, look, it's just too hard to do. I just don't have the time. So between good design, accountability, reminders, all of that stuff, because those are the human factors. We all have good intentions to do the work, but sometimes we just need a little nudge, usually from our smartphone, to say it's time to get to the dentist or whatever it is, right? Same thing with managing employees.
Yeah, unfortunately, nowadays, probably the smartphone is the biggest accountability holder for us on a day-to-day basis for our managers.
Yeah, it is. And we've got to leverage it. If we know that, right? If we've already depended so much on it, let's just add one more thing. So that becomes our go-to, our hub for all things work.
So before we wrap up here, the big takeaway that I got from you is really people just need to feel like people that work for you, right? It really boils down to that. And it's just one of the tools that you're going to use to make them feel like you care, right? Or show that you do really care.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, it's hard to fake sincerity. I think there was George Burns said something about that way back when. But it's so simple. We laugh about it. Like, it's just, business is just people working with people. And the better we get at the people piece, businesses can flourish. I say this all the time. If you were to win, let's just say you won the big lottery, right? The big Powerball, and you had to spend it on doing a dairy. You can't just walk away with all your money. You had to go put a big dairy up. Most people would buy the best cows and the best equipment and the best facility. And then when it comes to like, who's going to run it? We're like, oh yeah, we're going to have to do something about that. Like, wait, that's the last thing we thought about. Like, oh yeah, we're going to have to hire some people. My thought is, all right, you guys go figure out all the facility stuff, what we need. And somebody figure out the best tractors and cows and the whole thing. But I want to recruit the best people, the dream team, not because they're all the best performers, but because there's cohesion, there's chemistry, there's connection. If we just focus a little bit more on people, our business, I've seen it. I mean, like I've been part of those teams working and doing the dairy coach thing. If we just treated people just as people, as we like the whole golden rule deal, right? If employees, I don't care what level, whether you're entry level or top level, every person that walks this earth wants to know that they're appreciated, that they're valued. I mean, you can look at your family, the kids, like when they know that dad is going to spend time with them and they care, it's instant. Like you can't fake that. Money doesn't pay, like money doesn't buy that. And so often the easy thing to do is just pay more. And I'm all for that. Like competitively, we have to pay well, but people won't stay because they're being paid well. They'll leave if they're not. I mean, that's the given. If it's a bad deal, we know that, we bail. But if we're going to get good with people, there's got to be an intentional approach to that. And for me, I say this every time I get invited to speak somewhere to get that opportunity. One of my first slides is, if you paid attention to nothing else, just the old raffle rule, you must be present to win. Think of all the relationships in your life, business, professional, personal, at home, whatever. Your presence means so much. The time, like there's the old quote, how do you spell love? It's TIME, right? When your employees see that you're going to invest your time and you're going to show them that they matter, not just because you put some saying on the wall or you put these posters up about teamwork, you actually show them that you care. That whole piece drives a business.
Yeah, I had an example of that I'm at a business mastermind event right now. That's where I'm filming this. And one of the guys in the group is a serial entrepreneur. He's got like 5 businesses in 5 different sectors that are completely unrelated. And everyone's like, how do you do that? He's like, a business is people, or a business is employees, it's vendors, and it's customers. What are all 3 of those? They're people. You get good at working with people and leading people and caring for people. That's what every business is, no matter if you're farming, no matter if you're doing HVAC, no matter if you have a restaurant, right? I thought that was a really good summary of it.
It is. It doesn't matter the industry. It doesn't matter. It just doesn't matter. It's people. And we see that every day. Like when we go anywhere, like you're at a restaurant, you're at a hotel, just the interaction you have with the frontline people make and break your experience. Not the owner. You'll probably not see the owner there today, right? Where you're at. You probably won't even know who like the main manager is, but you will deal with the front desk person, the server, the bartender, whoever it is, frontline. And if they feel valued, they'll share that vision, like they'll share the experience of the company, the values of the company by their work that what's the word? That they emit to the rest of the world. And what I've been really fortunate with, my team has really bought into that. I think I've tried really intentionally. I mess up all the time. You can ask them, they'll tell you I mess up. But even in that, like when we mess up with our employees, I won't get into the details, but I've had to make some apologies. Like in front of the entire team, because we're all remote. So we'll be doing a Zoom call and I'll just say, hey, I just want to start by, I was a little too chippy the other day and it came out sideways. And I just want to, I owe you guys an apology for that. It'd be better if I didn't do it in the first place. But the fact that I had a chance to show my humanity that I mess up too, and I have at least some sense of awareness that I owe somebody else the dignity of an apology, and the fact that I can show that I can do it, like those are actual opportunities. Like as managers, when we mess up, we can keep going on and be like, hey, I'm the boss, I don't have to apologize. Or you can build so much more trust in saying, yep, I mess up too. And I'll own it and I'll do better. And I flat out had to say those words almost verbatim. And I hope that it makes a difference. There's no guarantee that it will, but we try.
Yeah, it definitely goes a long ways.
Yeah. One of the other things, like we always talk so much about like respect being one of our big values, right? We always talk about respect. One of the things that I see over and over, that the best way I think we can show respect, it's not just how we talk to each other. It's how long it takes to get back to somebody with a request that they make about their work. So yes, we all feel respected when somebody speaks to us politely and they don't yell at us with, cuss words or whatever when we get upset. Like that's like what I think everybody like, oh yeah, this is a respectful workplace where like we don't use foul language to each other. But forget that. I'm not saying it's not important, but most of us have enough self-control that we're not like swearing at each other at work. But where we're not respectful, and I think if we all just took a little step back and say, like, when somebody reaches out to me with a question or a request, do I get back to them within hours or is it days and weeks? Because when I feel like when I'm being ignored, I feel like there's no respect for that, for me. So sure, my boss has never yelled at me, never said any curse words, but it takes him 2 weeks to answer a question about getting a new scraper. Or I had a question about some with my schedule and crickets, nothing, as if I didn't even, like I'm invisible over here. So to challenge the idea of values and putting putting our best foot forward with our employees, it's as much about our actions and showing our true respect and value to people in our everyday, what we do and what we don't do.
Yeah, I saw that when I was in sales, right? When I had customers. I mean, they were customers at the time, not employees, but if you actually just followed up promptly on a question they had or a quote they wanted or whatever, you got the business because nobody does that. It's just so simple, right?
Basic, just the courtesy of a callback, right? And you're totally right. And it's funny that you say that because like when you were a salesperson, you saw the dynamic. When you own a dairy, you know how it feels on the other side. So now you just keep changing those hats, those roles. So you saw the value as a salesperson to get the business. As a person who gives the business, you value that too. Now as a person who has your own team, when you apply that same lesson to the people who make your business run, they're your employees, they're going to do that much more for you because you're showing them the respect that they would hope for and you need them to have so they do the work that you need them to do. It's just such a simple thing.
Yeah, very simple. And that you use the example of fixing equipment right away. And I think that's a big one on my farm that I really try to make sure that I handle promptly is get stuff fixed right away because, like you said, that shows them that you care. If they brought it to you, said, hey, this is broken, it's making my job a little more difficult, I'm going to address that right as soon as I can.
Yeah, for sure.
All right. So, Tom, before we wrap up, is there anything else that you wanted to say?
Well, I've always got a lot to say, Paul, but let me just end with this. Management, employee management, leadership, it's all a skill like everything else that we all do every day. Yes, some of us are born with these skills more than other people, whether it's communication or there's some people who are just kind of natural at it. But I truly believe, because I've seen it, people who are not in management roles or leadership roles, when they're called upon to do an official leadership or management role, because we're all kind of doing it, whether we have a title or not anyway. But for anybody who thinks they are in a role or not, and they don't think they're doing a good job, they can get better if they try. There's books, there's courses, there's just conversations with people that are in those roles. I'm truly fully convinced that if we want to be better leaders and managers, we just need to be intentional about it and practice those skills and become better and better every day. And that will lift all these levels on our teams to be better performers, care more, be more engaged, stick around, make money, have a great career. And I fully believe that it all starts and ends with leadership, and it's a skill that we can all learn.
That's some great advice, and I really appreciate you sharing your experience with us here today on the AgCulture Podcast. Tom Wall, the founder of PeopleCor. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Paul. We'll see you.
Thanks so much for listening to this episode with Tom Wall, founder of PeopleCor. Now, I just want to take a few seconds here, and if you're still with us, thank you so much for sticking with us through the whole episode. If you found value in this episode, which I'm sure you did, please send it to somebody you know. That's how we share this. We don't advertise. We share this and build this podcast organically. That's something I'm very passionate about. And if you found value in this, the best thing that you can do for somebody else is share this. Also, if you want to follow along on YouTube and see a lot of our videos that we post in between episodes, some of my travels, some of the things that are going on with our guests, please find us there at AgCulture Podcast. And don't forget to hit the subscribe button. We'd really appreciate that to grow our audience there. Until next week, I'm Paul Windemuller, and this has been the AgCulture Podcast.